Hi, I'm Peter J. Ray. Welcome. Today's topic is Resalest Remarkable Books, number 36. Before we start, I just want to say one thing. If you are reading books, if you're one thing I would highly recommend you doing if you haven't started is to make a book diary. And book diary, you write down what I do is I write down their order. I write down the title of the book, the author, and the year it was published, and then I write, just my reaction to the book. It doesn't have to be real long, maybe basically a paragraph, a few sentences. And then if you keep doing it, I started mine in 1994. I couldn't be making these videos right now if I hadn't done that. It's actually a nice record of your life also, if you look back on the books that you read. And who knows, maybe you yourself could make YouTube videos promoting books, because I really believe in books, that they're good things, they're a good influence on people, they're positive. Of course, most books, some books aren't good, but the fact of reading helps develop our brain, helps us to develop our mind, and I think it's interesting, entertaining, and empowering reading books. So anyway, I recommend writing a book diary if you haven't started already, if you are reading books. The first book today is For Your Own Good by Alice Miller, 1983. Well, this gets into this very important topic of raising children, and the author makes the case that there is the hidden cruelty in child rearing, and are the roots that's the roots of violence in the world. And this is a very disturbing yet profound book. And she makes the case that all children are abused. Children are hurt by adults. They grow up and ventilate their frustrations on their own children, and the cycle continues. If you can change child rearing, you will change the world. I have to say I agree with her. And the thing is, how do you do it? That's why my church is so important to me. The thing is, we have to change. One of the greatest thoughts we can ever have in life is, I need to change. And in the church I'm in, through yoga meditation, I think through God contact, we do change, become better people. We have to be better people. And that's something I've realized as a father, as a teacher, and as a husband. And so I need to change. And it takes time, but otherwise, if you do change, if you do try to treat your children differently, one thing you'll realize is other adults won't like it. And as a teacher, you face the whole school system, the way especially when I was in the Philippines, the way they're so hard on children. But so it's a very important topic, and something to think about. Actually, you get into this can lead to trouble. You'll have conflict with other adults who don't, because the thing is, culture is so powerful, and culture is a lot of people doing the same thing and encouraging each other, and all thinking they're right. Maybe they're all wrong. And so if you decide to raise children differently, there are people who will condemn you. But the thing is, we have to this is where courage comes in. We have to make a contribution to the world. We also have to accept reality, accept the school system, accept the way other parents are raising their children. But give people an option and show them there is another way. We don't have to be so hard on kids. Children don't have to be so miserable growing up, and schools don't have to be so painful for children. So it's a very important topic to think about. And I think it does come back to the issue is we need to change. We're all wrong, and that's the world history, very depressing topic, all the terrible things people have done to each other. So we're all part of it. The next book is Tournament Crisis by Coach Claire B., 1957. I read this out loud to our students at Resalest. It's a long book. It's part of the Chip Hilton Sports Series, old children's book. And it's about college basketball. There's a Chinese-American player, and I don't know what was going on with him, but Chip, the main character, is named Chip, and he helps Jimmy Chung. So, very interesting book. The next book is The House of Moses AllStars by Charlie Rosen, 1996. This book is set in 1936 in New York City. There is a Jewish basketball team that tours the country from New York to Los Angeles to have a big adventure. This is going back to the early stages of basketball and professional basketball. And I read this because the first professional dynasty in basketball, pro basketball, was the Cleveland Rosenblums, who were champions of the first pro league, the ABL, American Basketball League. They were champions in 1926, 1929, and 1930. And there is a reference in this book to Joe Lapchick, who played on that team. So this is a good history of the early days of basketball, when actually you had these Jewish fellas in New York City were the dominant players in pro basketball. The next book is A Season on the Brink, A Year with Bobby Knight and the Indiana Hoosiers by John Feinstein, 1987. Well, Bobby Knight was a famous college basketball coach, and he was very, very hard on his players. And so this is kind of a disturbing book, because I don't go for these coaches who do stuff like this. But he won 3 championships, 1975, 1981, and 1987. The book talks about players like Quinn Buckner, Isaiah Thomas, who had a starred in the NBA, and Steve Alford. So, yeah, and he was famous. He threw a chair in a game, and he was really hard on his players. And I don't know, it's kind of like the attitude of win at all costs, and that winning is the only thing. And I don't agree with this at all. So I'm not a big Bobby Knight fan, to be honest. The next book is The Life You Imagine, Life Lessons for Achieving Your Dreams by Derek Jeter with Jack Curry, 2000. And this was lent to me by a friend, Nico Decini, in the Philippines. And and I read it out loud to our son Tim when we were driving to his baseball games for LaSalle Green Hills. So Jeter talks about his life. His father was African American, and his mother was European descent American. And he believed in his dream, and he achieved it through hard work and positive thinking. Yeah, so Derek Jeter, a tremendous player for the New York Yankees, shortstop for a long, long time. They won, I think, 5 championships during his career. Good guy, real good guy, even though he was the rival of Cleveland, and during the era when Cleveland was a contender, and the Yankees won those 4 titles in 5 years, and Cleveland didn't win any. Anyway, he's a good guy. Everybody loves Derek Jeter. Good man. The next book is Nothing But the Truth by Avi, 1991. This is a children's book. I read it out loud to our son Tim. It's a story about a high school student who has a conflict with a teacher, and it becomes national news with misinformation, exaggeration, lack of communication, and political interests. So this is very interesting because, these in the schools there are conflicts, and and then people, it's problematic. This is part of life, these things I mentioned, because very often people, misinformation and so forth. Anyway, this is a good children's book. Gets into that issue, relations between teachers and students. Very good. The next book is Under the Blood-Red Sun by Graham Salisbury, 1994. This won the Scott Odell Award. This is a children's book. I read it out loud to our son. It's a great book. And it's very historical. It deals with Hawaii during the Second World War. Tough times for a Japanese-American family in Hawaii after December 7th, 1941, the bombing of Pearl Harbor by the Japanese. 2 things mentioned are baseball and friends. So that was tough. If you were a Japanese American, you might have been living in Hawaii a long, long time. But then the Japanese attacked Hawaii, and then naturally people were mad about that, and the war started, and then the Japanese became the enemy. Although they didn't arrest all the Japanese in Hawaii, but in California they did. So it was tough, that they were, simply because their country of origin had done something, and we were at war with Japan. So it just shows the concept, shows the reality of life. Sometimes you get in trouble through no fault of your own for political reasons. The next book is The Perilous Road by William O. Steele, 1958. This is another children's book, won the Newbery Award. Of course, those are always a good bet to read. I read it out loud to our son Tim. It's set during the American Civil War. A character named Chris is age 12, and he hates Yankee soldiers, so he must have been a Southerner. Yankee soldiers would be... It was between North and South. The Yankees were the soldiers from the North, or just people in the North. The book is set in Tennessee, and I think, yeah, there was a controversy in that state about people, who were you going to support, North or South, although generally Tennessee was considered a southern state. And this character, he learns that Yankees are human and kind when Yankee soldiers befriend him. And also his brother became a Yankee soldier. Yeah, this whole issue of hatred and war and ethnic conflict. In this case, even though they were all Americans fighting, there was an ethnic, you could call an ethnic difference or a cultural difference. The North being more urban and the South rural. And so there was these hard feelings. And that's actually one of the things behind war. The only way you can have a war, really, probably, is if there is guys or men. How can you get guys to kill other? How can you get men to kill other men when you break the commandment, "Thou shalt not kill"? Well, they have to whip up hatred, apparently, or part of the time. The next book is Willie's Time by Charles Einstein, 1979. This is a tremendous book. It's all about Willie Mays, some consider the greatest baseball player ever. He was a star in the 1950s, 1960s, and briefly into the 1970s. He hit powerful home runs, 660, dazzling base running, incredible outfield play, and he had a cannon arm. He was on the 1954 New York Giants, who won the World Series, actually defeated Cleveland Indians in 4 straight games. And so he starred for the New York Giants, and then they moved to San Francisco, and he played out there for, they moved there in I think 1958. So most of his career was in I think San Francisco, and then he actually came back to New York, played for the Mets 1 year at the very end. Good guy, tremendous player, incredible player, his speed and so forth. Anyway, the next book is The Devil Wears Pinstripes, George Steinbrenner, The Satans of SWAT and the Curse of A-Rod by Jim Capel, 2005. This is described as the anti-Yankee handbook, plenty of jokes, and actually he gets into this interesting idea that back in the 1950s, the Yankees were so good that attendance went down. I guess the people thought, they were just, wasn't that exciting, so the Yankees were so powerful. And then, they have this idea, I hate the Yankees, which of course we shouldn't hate anybody. In Cleveland, they gave away I hate the Yankees handkerchiefs back in the 70s. And the Yankees really are they are the greatest baseball team franchise in history. And so a lot of people support them, love them, a lot of people hate them, and interesting, very good baseball history here. The next book is The Great Adventure, Peace Corps, Volunteer Stories of Life Overseas by the Peace Corps, 1999. Oh, this is a wonderful book. Of course, the Peace Corps is a government organization in the United States that would send generally young people overseas to third world countries to try to help in different ways. And they started this, there was the idea there was always so much war in the world and we needed to promote peace. And basically what it did is helped young Americans to experience life in a third world country and to have a better understanding of those countries and to establish friendships. And I was actually applied to the Peace Corps in the 80s, and I didn't pan out because I got a job in Switzerland. But then I ended up living 20 years in the Philippines, which was kind of like my Peace Corps experience. And so anyway, it's real interesting. Then there's been controversy. Some of the people think, there's the CIA is involved, and it's not that easy going to a third world country and trying to help because you have the culture, and they're sending these young people. What do they know? They're just out of college, but I think it's been a positive thing. Probably the best thing it did is helped young Americans to know the reality in third world countries. So I think it's a good government agency. The next book is Island of Fear by Ruben R. Canoy, 1987. Oh, I love this book. This is set in the Philippines. It's a novel, although the Philippines isn't described as such. It has a different name. It's a real adventure. It gets into the problems of corruption, and it's anti-American, which is unfortunate because I'm not saying the U.S. hasn't made mistakes, but I believe, in my opinion, the United States has had a positive effect in the Philippines. So the different things, fighting for justice, and I actually wrote to the author, and we exchanged letters, so that was nice. I was able to, Ruben R. Canoy. So the title is very appropriate, The Island of Fear, because that's one of the things I was aware of in the Philippines is the issue of fear. And I think the Philippines is a good country, but definitely I sense that fear, general fear, which I think goes back to especially the Spanish era, and where there's a lot of, especially between the rich and the poor. The rich are so powerful with their money, and so the poor tend to fear them because of the power that the rich have with their wealth. And the rich also fear the poor because there's so many poor people, and they're afraid of, there could be, they could take over the government and, start persecuting the wealthy, which happens when you have communist movements that take over government. So I think, it does get back to the issue of raising children, and we often use fear in raising them, and that's wrong. That's where all the trouble starts. We shouldn't use fear raising children. But it's yeah. So, and anyways, I recommend this book. It's real nice. The next book is Say It Ain't So, Joe: The True Story of Shoeless Joe Jackson and the 1919 World Series by Donald Gropman, 1979. Oh, I love this book. Wonderful. Shoeless Joe Jackson was a Major League Baseball player in the early part of the 20th century. And he was on this team, played for the Chicago White Sox, and they got to the World Series. And a lot of the players accepted money to not play well, and they lost the World Series. They should have won. They were a much better team. The Cincinnati Reds won the team. Eventually, this scandal came out of what had happened, so a number of players were banned from baseball for life, including Joe Jackson. Charlie Comiskey was the owner of the White Sox. He was very stingy. I don't think he paid his players well, so he's actually in the Hall of Fame. I'm in favor of Shoeless Joe Jackson, being in the Hall of Fame because tremendous hitter. There are different people have supported him. Of course, he's long dead. The movie Field of Dreams talks about, and they said, well, how did he? If he actually had a very high batting average in the World Series, and he did accept the money because he was under pressure. It was a tough situation he was put in, but he played real hard. He also played for Cleveland, the Cleveland Naps, and he could hit, tremendous hitter. In the movie Field of Dreams, Kevin Costner calls triples. They said Joe Jackson was the guy whose glove was where triples went to die. That he was so fast he could run down these long fly balls. The next book is Wicked World Cup by Michael Coleman, 1998. This is a very funny book. It's about soccer, of course. The World Cup is this international soccer competition held every 4 years. And what I've learned from this is to support the teams that have never won a World Cup, especially Spain. Although I think maybe Spain, did they win the last World Cup? Russia, Holland, and Mexico. Former Yugoslavia, since they broke up. So that's the thing I have to research, because rooting for the teams that have never won World Cups. A lot of them, like Brazil's won 5, I think. Italy's won quite a few. Germany's quite a few. There are all these countries that want to win a championship. Argentina, I think, twice. France, maybe twice. England, once. So let's root for the teams that have never won, the countries that have never won the World Cup, because especially when that's their national game, And that would make people so happy if they could win the World Cup. The next book is Pat Riley, The Winner Within, A Life Plan for Teammates by Pat Riley, 1993. Of course, Pat Riley was the tremendous head coach of the Los Angeles Lakers. He won a number of championships in the 1980s with guys like Magic Johnson and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. And And then he moved to the New York Knicks. I don't know. I think he got to the finals. Did not win with the Knicks. But then in Miami, he's gone to Miami and he's still there. Well, he's not coaching. I think he won 3 championships there. So Pat Riley, interesting fella. He's getting older. He's an old guy now. Back in the '80s, he was a cool guy. When the LA Lakers won all these championships, and he was the coach. The next book is In These Girls, Hope is a Muscle by Madeline Blaise, 1995. Very beautiful book. It's about the Amherst High School in Amherst, Massachusetts. Their basketball team became state champions. So I thought this was very inspiring, and these girls learned to believe in themselves. So yeah, I think I'm all in favor of girls playing sports for enjoyment and for recreation. And so, why should boys have all the fun, right? The next book is How Life Imitates the World Series by Thomas Boswell, 1982. Oh, this is a tremendous book. Really enjoyed it. Very well written. Talks about these iconic players from Major League Baseball history. Reggie Jackson, Pete Rose, Earl Weaver, the manager, Steve Carlton, Bill Veeck, an owner, George Brett, Rod Carew, Bobby Grich, Bucky Dent's big home run in the 1978 playoffs, Mike Cuellar, Baseball in Cuba, Curt Flood, and the Spitball Pitchers. Wonderful baseball book. The next book is Holes by Louis Sachar, 1998. Read this. This is a children's book. I read it out loud to our son, Tim. Stanley is a 12-year-old boy who goes to a prison camp. I said, I don't know what he had done. So he was in prison. He was only 12. And he digs holes all day. I guess it's like the old days they would have guys working, even if there was no purpose to the work. And he finds a buried treasure and has hard times. There are miraculous onions, drama, heroes, villains, and a happy ending. An incredible book. This is a very famous children's book. Wow. I wrote, man, what an amazing book. Tremendous. The next book is Lords of the Realm by John Helyar, 1994. This is an incredible book. The history of Major League Baseball owners and their relationships with players. Players were completely at the mercy of the owners until 1967, when Marvin Miller unionized them. Free agency came, salaries skyrocketed, and then this real owner-player war started. So he talks about these famous owners, Walter O'Malley, the Dodgers, crazy guys like Charlie Finley of the Oakland A's and Ted Turner of the Atlanta Braves. At one point, Turner was at some social event, and he was kind of crazy. He got down on his knees and started barking like a dog. Commissioners, Judge Landis, Happy Chandler, Ford Frick, Bowie Kuhn, Peter Ueberroth, Bart Giamatti, whose son is a famous actor today, Paul Giamatti, Fay Vincent, Bud Selig, now there's a new guy, I don't know his name, arbitrator Peter Seitz, who freed Catfish Hunter and started free agency, greed, selfishness, human beings. Yeah, this is interesting. They always talk about the players, but this really talks about the owners. And yeah, in the old days, they were really underpaid the players, and the players had no choice but to accept these, and they were not paid well. And now it's completely different. Now you can't even hardly go to a game. Back in the 70s, when I was a kid, real cheap going to baseball games. It was like $2, $3 going to a game, and players didn't make much. They were making $20,000, $30,000 a year. Now, if a player makes $1 million a year, that's considered very low. These unbelievable salaries now. Some guys are getting $30 million a year. And it's very hard to go to games now for the average Joe because the ticket prices are so expensive. The next book is Mad as Hell, How Sports Got Away from the Fans and How We Get It Back by Mike Lupica, 1996. This is a great book. Mike Lupica talks about the problems in sports. Cities losing teams when they move. Now the cities are trying to lure teams away from other cities. Players leaving teams for more money. High ticket prices. Athletes misbehaving. owners and players obsessed with money, the media focusing on bad things, fans watching too much sports on TV. And so anyway, I wrote in my book diary that the author missed the answers. That people shouldn't be watching. So turn off the TV, read sports books, and fans should support title-deprived teams. In other words, teams that have not won championships for a very long time. That's why I was so happy when the Philadelphia Eagles won the Super Bowl, because that was their first championship since 1960. And the Houston Astros won the Baseball World Series last year. That was their first baseball championship. And when Cleveland won in 2016, that was our first pro basketball championship since 1930. So very, very interesting. The next book is FIFA World Cup USA 1994, the official book by Peter Arnold, 1994. I read this because the 2006 World Cup was being played at that time. Now, he talks about the great World Cups from the past. In 1930, Uruguay, winning in Uruguay. World Cup was in Uruguay, and Uruguay won in South America. In 1934, Italy hosted the World Cup and won it. It's always nice to win at home. And Germany won their first, 1954 in Switzerland. That was nice for them since the Second World War was such a tragedy, especially for Germany. Brazil's first championship in 1958 in Sweden. And then England hosted in 1966 and won the World Cup. Germany hosted in 1974 and won. And Argentina hosted in 1978 and also won. And France hosted in 1998 and won again. So this is real. I'm not really into soccer, but I'm into international countries, the countries of the world. And if you get a group of guys from different countries, chances are the one thing they have in common is soccer. I have a good friend whose father's from Germany, into soccer as well. So that's why I'm interested. I think the World Cup is this year in Russia, I believe. The next book is Nenak Rise by Natalie Babbitt, 1970. This is a children's book, won the Newbery Honor, and I read out loud to our son Tim. It's set in a small town, and folks love to be scared of and entertained by the McGwire, a legendary creature who lives in the mountain. A boy named Egan discovers that the McGwire doesn't exist, but the people continue to believe. They need the McGwire for their entertainment. So, very interesting story. Natalie Babbitt, she did a good job here. The next book is Mark McGwire, a biography by Jonathan Hall, 1998. So anyway, Mark McGwire became famous in 1998 when he shattered the single-season home run record. Roger Maris had broke Babe Ruth's record, which was 60 home runs. Maris hit 61 and 61. And then McGwire hit 70 in 1998. So wow, he hit 9 more. So this was big news. And he hit his 61st home run, tying Maris on his father's 61st birthday. And he and Sammy Sosa were competing that year. Sosa also, I think he hit 64 maybe. He broke, but he's not kind of forgotten. He also broke the record. He helped McGwire to laugh and smile. And there was so much, he was under stress. And it was kind of sad later, not many years later. Well, then Barry Bonds broke that record. He hit 73. And then the whole steroid scandal broke, that these fellows were using steroids. And kind of diminished people's interest and made it kind of a shame. So anyway, thank you so much for watching. It appears we're out of time. I appreciate it. I wish you well. Hope you find a good book to read. God bless you, and see you next time.